Some of the most interesting films happen where filmmakers and actors decide to take creative risks, right at the moment when their careers are at their strongest. And that's exactly what makes The Bride such an interesting project. Because this isn't just another film about monsters, it's a filmmaking take on one of cinema's most iconic characters, and attempting to completely reinvent it. This is my Filmmaker review. The Bride is a radical reinterpretation of the Frankenstein mythology, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal and starring Jessie Buckley alongside Christian Bale. Rather than simply recreate the classic monster story, the film leans heavily into reinterpretation, treating the bride not just as a horror icon, but as a character exploring identity, transformation, and agency. It's less interested in recreating the traditional monster movie and more interested in reshaping it. And Jessie Buckley arrives in the film at a fascinating moment in her career. After the huge critical success of Hamnet, she just won the Golden Globe for Best Actress and is currently one of the major contenders at this year's Oscars. So The Bride lands right in the middle of that momentum, with Buckley stepping into one of cinema's most iconic characters. And that choice is interesting because something often happens when actors reach this level of recognition. Instead of choosing safer roles, they often take creative risks. Suddenly there's more freedom to explore unusual characters, strange stories, and projects that might not exist without that momentum behind them. And stepping into a reinterpretation of The Bride of Frankenstein certainly feels like that kind of decision. With The Bride, Gyllenhaal isn't trying to recreate the energy of the classic Universal monster films. Instead, the film feels much closer to a reinterpretation of the myth itself, taking familiar characters and using them as a foundation to build something more personal and stylistically distinct. And as a filmmaker, that's always the interesting balance. How far can you push a familiar story before it becomes something entirely new? What I find fascinating about The Bride is that it leans fully into the idea of reinvention. This is a huge cinematic risk for Maggie Gyllenhaal. She isn't simply retelling the Frankenstein story we already know. She's swinging for the fences and trying to reshape it into something new. And that kind of ambition doesn't always land with everyone. But personally, I loved the film because of those risks. We've recently seen a beautiful adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it's a wonderful reminder of just how powerful that original story still is. But we also know that story very well. With The Bride, it feels completely fresh, strange, stylized, and genuinely compelling to watch because you're never quite sure where it's going next, and that for me is exciting. Now, not every viewer is going to feel the same way. Films that take risks like this can divide audiences, but cinemas always move forward because filmmakers were willing to reinterpret the stories we think we already know. And The Bride feels very much like one of those attempts. A filmmaker taking a classic piece of cinema mythology and daring to do something completely different with it.